Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of Jafo Paints. Today we're going to be painting Elias. The very obviously does not look like Gandalf the Grey from Massive Darkness. So I've gone ahead and I've primed our guy here. Let's see if we can get him looking a little bit better. I've primed our little soldier here in Mechanicus Standard Grey primer, spray primer, and we're going to go back over him. We're going to use Mechanicus Standard Grey again. We're going to go back over all of his cloak and everything. And just so you guys can see everything that's we got going on today. There is the pile of paints that we're going to do. So I'll kind of quickly go over and show you what we're going to do with this and what my intentions are. So we're going to go base over his cloak in Standard Grey. His rod and sword, we're going to go over in lead Belcher. I forgot one more color. We'll put the hilt pommel in the Retributor armor so that you can see all of those. Of course, our second layer on our sword and our staves will be with Rune Fang steel. We are going to mix up a combination of Storm Vermin and Dawnstone to cover up some of the alternating gray spots on him, which is going to be like the strapping right there, kind of the edges of the strap belt right there. We're going to use Abaddon Black to put that on his belt. We're going to use combinations of Rhinox hide and XV88 to give us our leathers, which will be used on all of his pouches, which you can see right there. And finally, we use some Mashapti bone to go there. And this would not be a Jafo Paints tutorial without, of course, our favorite things, shades. So we will also use our Null Oil and Agrax Earth Shade. So, and then the last thing that I'm going to do, we're going to try a new technique. I haven't done one before. Take a base of Stormhost Silver and then your Citadel Technical Soulstone Blue, and we're going to make the top of his staff have a blue gemstone look to it. Looking at his card, unfortunately you cannot see the top of his staff. It almost looks like a light bulb, but instead of trying to do the lighting effects, we're going to just try and do it that way. So stick around and find out how Jafo paints Elias. Alright guys, as you can see, I've got my palette working. Get some Mechanicus Standard Grey, get a little bit of water to smooth out your paint a little bit, and we're going to use the Citadel's standard brush. This one's a little bit old for me. You guys can find the comparative model of the Citadel or one of their new brushes if you're into using the Citadel Workshop stuff. If not, find it a comparative. You're just looking for a brush that you can get a lot of the flat on. I'll show you here. We're just kind of painting over. We want to hide all of the brown since our spray primer didn't do so good a job this time. We want to hide all of the brown. And also want to know why we're getting red in our coloring. Oh, no, that's just the way the gray looks on the brown. So we're just going to go over all of that and paint all of his cloak a gray, and we'll be back and show you how that's done.
Easy push-fit models.
And there you go. After a quick little smattering of Mechanicus Standard Grey, as you can tell, he's got a little bit darker gray to him, and that's going to give us a nice fine base to start with on Elias. So the next thing we're going to move to is we're going to get the black on his belt. We're going to need to be neat with that. We're going to take our small layer brush for him. I'm going to put a little bit of black on our palette, and we're going to get to painting on him. We got some black paint on our palette again. Water it down just a little bit so it's thinner, it's easier to work with, it flows much more smoothly. Using our small brush, we're just going to touch up his belt there. And now you want to try and be neat, because gray going over black, not the greatest thing to do. So we'll be back after we got that all painted. And there we go, just a simple black. You can kind of see it hiding in all of that gray. I'm just going to make his sash black. And I took a little artistic license, as it were. And instead of making this silver, I think I'm just going to make it black. We'll see what I want to do. Maybe we'll just edge that highlight a little bit grayer, and we'll go from there. So let's see. I think the next one, let's get some color on this guy. So we're going to put some lead Belcher, and we're going to do that on his sword and staff. Get a little bit of our lead Belcher on our base. Again, use a little bit of water to thin that down so it moves smoothly, and we're just going to use that. We're just going to quickly cover up the sword, front and back, like so. And then we're going to get that staff. We're going to leave the gemstone, the gray, for now, because we're going to hit that with a different color. And of course, while I said adding color really doesn't add a whole lot of color, because a dark metal gray really doesn't really match much differently from the original gray, but we start and we go. So let's actually add some color, and let's do some Rhinox base, and we'll do a couple of his pouches on his back in Rhinox, and then we'll do a couple of the pouches in XV88 just to give him some differentiating. Alright, we got our Rhinox and our XV88 all ready, and now we're going to paint up a couple of the bags. I think we're going to do the stiff bags, the ones that look more like scroll cases. We're going to do these in Rhinox. And then we're going to do the other ones in, so you can see right there. And then we're going to do the pouches we'll do in that lighter leather. And that'll give us some variation on him. We'll be right back. Alright, so that you can see our little wizard so far. And look at that. Just put some Rhinox and some XV88s. We got some differing leathers on him, and that I think already makes the miniature pop out just a little bit more. So I think we're going to switch over to the next detail, and we'll show you how that one works. I got a little bit of our, what the heck is it even today? Our Retributor Armor Gold. We're going to use that to paint the hilts. As always, with any of the Jafo paints tutorials, make sure you add in just a little bit of water so you can thin down your paints. So they flow more smoothly, you get better control of them. And there you go. You can see what I'm doing right here. We're just getting, and if you start shaking, make sure you keep your wrists flat against the workspace so that you can use your shaking essentially to your advantage, like I just did right there. And now we can afford to be a little bit messy because we are going to go over some of those colors that we just missed on. And there you go. And just like that, I'll bring them into focus a little bit. And there you go. Alright, and one of the colors that I did forget to mention, because I forgot he does have some flesh, so we're going to start with some Cadian flesh tone. And we're going to put that on his hands and on his face. There's barely a little bit of skin showing, but we're going to get that in there, and we'll be right back to show you how that looks. Alright, we got our Cadian flesh tone. You can kind of see it on there. We got a little bit under his hat there for his face, and of course his hands, which just helps to bring it out a little bit more. So the next thing we're going to do is, I've already got some Dawnstone Gray down on our palette right here, and we're going to use that to differentiate the straps on his hat, as well as the strappings that comes off of his cloth right here. So we're going to, once again, add just a little bit of water, smooth down your paint so that it flows much easier, and we're just going to get in there and we're going to start painting those. Now, once again, you want to be very careful with this, because now you're starting to get a bunch of your colors blocked out, and you don't want to have to go back if you don't have to. So we'll be right back. Alright, with that we have our gray color down. It looks like you can see it a little bit. So what we painted is we painted up the strap around his hat. I painted his beard in that gray. You might be able to pick it out and notice I painted the toggles on his cloak. I painted this strap right here, and I decided to paint that tip of his belt and just give it a little bit of differentiating color. And I think this is where we're going to stop, essentially with level 1. So now this is pretty good for tabletop quality, but if you want to bring it up and make it look better, stay tuned, and we're going to start with inking, and we're going to ink pretty much the entire main portion of his body in our favorite color of all, Null Oil. Null Oil is going to be a dark black shade. We're going to shade that, and it's going to just get into all of those recesses and everything, and that's going to help make that miniature pop a lot more. Be right back. Alright, you can see that. So that's going to darken up all of those. Then we're going to switch over to our Agrax Earthshade. And we're just going to hit the pouches, which is going to give the pouches some depth. And that's really what you're doing with this shade, is that kind of seeps into the base there, or into the crevices, and it kind of just makes that ink, or makes that stuff pop just a little bit more. And that's all we really wanted to do, is just that right there. And then finally, we're going to switch over to our Reichland Flesh Shade, which, as you can guess by its name, is going to go right over its skin tone, and that's going to give it that kind of cherryish color. And that's that reddish hue that all of us humans have, as long as you are actually human. If you're an alien watching this, first of all, welcome to the stream. Thank you for clicking on this video. I appreciate it. Hopefully you learn how to capture us and something. But anyway, enough talking about our alien overlords. I'm just going to put that on there. Ugh, when you try to do something steady on camera and your hand wobbles like mad. And what that does, as you can see, is it brings out a little bit. You want to make sure that this doesn't pool, otherwise it'll look like butt. Yep, I just said butt on a painting video. There we go. Get a little bit of them there, a little bit of them there. Give this about 15-20 minutes to dry, and you'll be ready for the next step. Alright, after some time has gone by, unless you're like me and trying to film this in a short amount of time and you're in a hurry, you can use a hairdryer to speed up the process. This is what our guy looks like here. Again, this is another good stopping point. If you wanted to stop and just play the game with him, I would just put a basing on him of Dawnstone Gray, and that way he matches the rest of our set, and I would move on from there. However, you're still watching, so let's keep going. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to switch to a small dry brush, and we're going to hit this guy up. We're going to dry brush with this thing. If you've never dry brushed before, this is going to be a new technique for you. We're going to take Storm Vermin Fur. We're going to take a little bit of our paint, put a little bit on our brush. Get most of your paint off your brush. And you got this paper. That's why the paper's on the screen, so you can see what I'm doing. We're going to get a little bit of that paint brush off there. And all we're going to do is just going to go back and forth, and this is going to pick up the highlights and the high spots on his robes. That's going to make his robes look a little bit better. They're just going to pop out that much more, and it's going to let all that inking that we just did rest at the bottom, and it's going to give him such a depth of character. And if you're like me and you put a little too much paint on your brush and too much paint on your paper, so we're just moving it back and forth real quickly. And it just hits the high spots and it leaves the ink where we want it. And just like that, real quick, it only took a little over a minute to do. There you go. We're going to switch colors. Alright, now the next color we've got down, we've got on our palette on the back here, we've got our Rune Fang Steel. We're going to use this to highlight a little bit of our weaponry. So we're going to just do an edge highlight with, never mind, we're not going to do an edge highlight. We're just going to paint like we've done on so many before. We're going to paint up to the top half of his sword, or the top 2/3 of his sword, and that'll just give that contrasting color. And then we're going to do probably the same up on here, and that's going to be because of the gem. We're going to use that as part of our lighting effect for the gem. So we're going to move this up to here, so that as this doesn't look as dark and dingy. And there you go. Also off camera, what I did, I took the same Dawnstone that we used for his beard, and we used that to dry brush his beard, and that just kind of gives it a two-tone look to it. We now have Kislev flesh. That's the other flesh tone that we're going to use, and we're just going to give him a little bit of a touch-up here. Just want to bring out some differentiating colors. This will bring the reds. It'll leave the red on his hand a little bit. And then we're going to just do a little bit of a lining on his bridge of his nose, and I'll be right back to show you. Alright, so we've just brightened up his hands a little bit. Also off camera, I used a little bit of the Ushabti bone. That is that bleached bone color, and I just painted up his toggles or dongles or whatever you want to call them that are keeping his cloak closed. So we did that, which pretty much leaves us to the final two pieces, and that's going to be to paint his orb. So we're going to start with Stormhost Silver. And as you can see, it is a very, very, very shiny metal. So we're going to put some of that on our palette, and we'll be right back. Alright, now that we got our Stormhost on there, we're going to paint that orb. Get a nice even coat. If it takes you 2 coats to do it, that's fine. Get that done. But you want it to be nice and even and smooth looking, so that when we do the next step with the Soul Stone, we're gonna do. There we go. Let that dry. We'll be back with Soul Stone. All right, now that we got that, make sure that that's open. Don't run your fingers over it and get finger smudges, so you don't want to do that. So I guess we're going to fix what we just did instead of moving on to the next color. Be careful when you touch stuff to see if it's tacky, because it might actually be tacky.